At Metro by T-Mobile, there's not a yada yada. That means nope.
How powerful is Cox Internet? So powerful that
so far from my home. Oh, mama, I can hear you crying. You're so scared and all alone. Hangman is coming down from the gallows, and I don't have very long. The king is up, the news is out, they finally found me. The renegade who had it made, retreat for a bounty. Never more to go astray, this will be the end today of the wanted man. Oh, mama, I've been here on the lam and had a whole bunch on my head. Love answered, get him dead or alive. I was for sure he'll see me dead. Dear mama, I can hear you crying. You're so scared and all alone. Hangman is coming down from the gallows, and I don't have very long. The jig is up, the news is out, they finally found me. The renegade who had it made, retreat for a bounty. Never more to go astray, just will have revenge today of the wanted man. Oh, mama, I'm in fear for my life from the long arm of the law. Hangman is coming down from the gallows, and I don't have very long. The jig is up, the news is out, they finally found me. The renegade who had it made, retreat for a bounty. Never more to go astray, this will be the end today of the wanted man. The wanted man.
Verbo vacation homes come with
If you can't stop thinking about owning a home,
A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to draw your attention to the side screens. We have a 5-minute video we'd like to play for you before we get started this evening. So if you would please watch the side screens for a little video about Nick Adams. Thank you.
My name is Nick Adams. I was born in Sydney, Australia in September 1984. Most people wait a long time for a life-changing moment, but mine came at just 16 months when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and given just a 5% chance of life. Once I became old enough to understand what I had overcome, I decided that I was never going to waste a single second of my life, that I would hunt every opportunity and pursue every dream, and I have. I came to America with just 2 things, a dream and a speech. Today, I am a 4-time best-selling author, presidential appointee, social media influencer, and people call me President Trump's favorite author. I'm on television and radio almost every single day. 9 governors have given me honorary status in their states: Texas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Nebraska, Arkansas, South Carolina, Missouri, Arizona, and Tennessee. I'm a legal immigrant and naturalized citizen. I'm in love with America. I believe it's the greatest country in the history of the world. I don't like woke, I don't follow the crowd, and I can't stand political correctness. I believe in our military, in our police, in borders, in the traditional family unit, in God, in capitalism, in limited government, in entrepreneurship, and in the American idea. What keeps me up at night is that this country might turn out like the one I felt I had to leave. As Americans, we have a lot to be proud of and a lot to fight for. But America is going out of business, and we need to start acting like it. That's why the day I immigrated in 2016, I founded a national non-profit to help lead America's resurgence. It's called FLAG, the Foundation for Liberty and American Greatness. We started in a garage, but we are now a $2 million organisation with national headquarters in Florida. What does FLAG do? 1, rally everyday Americans against socialism and for the American way of life. 2, fight back against the false narrative that America is a terrible country. And 3, teach civics to young Americans. FLAG reaches tens of millions of Americans every month. More than 1 million American students have a FLAG resource in their hands. Tens of thousands of teachers use our materials. And we have equipped tens of thousands of parents and grandparents with the materials to educate and protect their children and grandchildren. We are on the front line fighting critical race theory and liberal poison propaganda and every radical left school board. No amount of the FBI calling all of us domestic terrorists for speaking up about what is going on in our schools is going to stop us. America will be defended. But we can't just defend our turf. We must go on the offense. Our country has never needed our participation more, and there will probably never be a time that our leadership will have a greater impact than now. Let's stick it to the fake news media, the big tech oligarchs, big labour union bosses, and liberal special interest groups. Everyone who lives in the United States must understand, accept, and defend our principles, virtues, and values. I will never stop fighting for America. I know you won't either. Let's go out there and make sure America never becomes a socialist country.
More controversy today for Roger Stone after his prison sentence was...
All right. My name's Shane McFarland. I'm the president of Ahern Hotel. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. And I want to say a special thank you to Nick Adams for coming here. I had a few minutes to spend some time with him backstage. Very intriguing story. We're going to bring George Harris out here in a minute, who's your host. But before I do, I just want to tell you a few things that are happening here at the hotel. Last night, we had Meet the Experts. It was fascinating. On Tuesday nights, we do Inside Scoop, right? Wednesdays, there's karaoke. Thursdays, we have Vita Bella Wine Bar, wine pairings and tastings. This Friday, we have Bobby Slayton in our Ahern Live Comedy Showroom. So there's always things that are happening here. And I notice everybody's on their phones right now, so since you're on your phones, I want you guys to take your phones all the way out. Some of you have them out, some of them you're just glancing at them. And I want you to text the word Ahern to 26786 for a number of reasons. One, you'll get to see all the events that are taking place here. 2, tonight is Tomahawk Tuesdays. So if you're hungry, right, it's Tomahawk Tuesdays in Joel's Chop House where you get $100 off a tomahawk. And it's incredible. Yeah. Also, there's another group downstairs, and there's some appreciation groups that are in Vita Bella Wine Bar. But if you text 26786 tonight, you'll also be able to get 20% off Automo if the Chop House isn't where you guys want to hang out. So with that, again, I want to thank everybody for being out tonight, and I want to turn the time over to Mr. George Harris. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. On behalf of the chairman of the Ahern family of companies, Don Ahern, we want to welcome you. We appreciate you guys coming out to these events. These events are for you. It's very important that I emphasize that to you. These events are for you. These events are, we will bring people in, hopefully from all over the country that you're not going to get an opportunity, to see in such a tight atmosphere. So again, we need you to bring 2 or 3 of your friends. Bring more people. If we can pack this showroom every week, we can justify doing this. So tonight, our guest is Nick Adams. Nick Adams is a Trump appointee to the Smithsonian Institute. And what's great about that is that he's still on the board of directors, because the Democrats haven't figured out that he's on the board of directors. After tonight, he might be off. He's written a couple of books, but he's with Simon & Schuster. He's got some bestseller books. He will be signing books after this. I think he has his Trump and Churchill and his Trump and Reagan book. So without that, any further ado, I'd like to bring Nick. Nick, come on out. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nick Adams. So we're going to dig right into this. As everybody knows, it's a simple format. We do 10 questions, 10 answers, and in between every other question, we ask the audience to participate because we want you guys to participate. Okay? So, Nick, you are a legal immigrant and you naturalized as an American citizen. You've got over 3 million followers on social media and you built a great life here. Tell us about your American journey, how it began, and what brought you here today.
Well, good evening to everybody. Thank you very much, George, for having me. Thank you very much to the Ahern family, to Mr. Ahern, for your hospitality. I am delighted to be here with you tonight. The inside politics really seems to be taking off, and I'm delighted and honoured and privileged to be able to take part in it. Look, you've really got to go back all the way to the very beginning, George, for my journey. Most people wait a long time for a life-changing moment. I didn't have to. At the age of 16 months, I was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma, a very rare form of childhood cancer. But it's really the story of how I was diagnosed that set me on my American journey. For a long time, I was very, very ill. My mother and father took me to as many doctors and pediatricians as possible to try and diagnose what is wrong with me. But they weren't able to. And one night, with me even more unsettled than usual, they took me to the emergency ward of the local children's hospital. The ward was almost deserted, but there was one overnight doctor there, a young man with a smiling face and an accent. And as he looked me over, he said, "Look, I don't know for sure, but I have a hunch that I may have seen this before. And I think it might be this neuroblastoma, and you need to get your child in as soon as possible tomorrow morning for tests, because if I'm right, you're really looking at a very difficult few months, years." And so the very next day, my parents' worst fears would be confirmed. I was given a 5% chance of life. Only 1 in 20 children with stage 4 neuroblastoma survive. To this day, the cause of neuroblastoma remains unknown. The doctor was an American doctor, fresh out of college, just in Australia for a summer residency. So I'm fond of saying that I haven't only studied American exceptionalism, I've lived it. In fact, I'm alive because of it. So that's what kind of started me off on my particular journey. I realized early on, once I became of an age where I could properly comprehend what precisely I had gone through, I resolved to never ever waste a single second of a minute of an hour of a day of a month of a year of my life. And I'm pretty happy to be able to report to you here today that I have very much lived up to that self-commitment. I was the valedictorian of my school. I was publicly elected to political office at the age of 19. The first election I ever voted in, I voted for myself. It's all been downhill since then, let me tell you. On the 13th of September 2005, I was elected the youngest deputy mayor in Australian history in Sydney, a record which still stands to this day. I'm now a best-selling author, a national television commentator, and all of those wonderful things have happened to me, George. And I like to say that really I was an American trapped inside an Australian body for the first 32 years of my life. I was somebody that was unconventional. I was somebody that didn't want to conform. I was somebody that wanted to do things my way. I was someone that was rather entrepreneurial, liked to colour outside of the lines, and that really wasn't conducive to the Australian culture. So that's really what started my journey and what remains at the crux of that journey.
Wow. So Nick has appeared on every Fox television show. He's been on Laura Ingle. He was on O'Reilly. And so when you always look at him, you go, God, do I know this guy? Do I know this guy? And because even I told him, I said, Nick, I know we've met. And he goes, no, mate, you've seen me on TV. So as someone who wasn't born here, what would you say makes America special, and what are the values that you believe in?
George, I believe in God, personal responsibility, the sanctity of human life, limited government, a strong national defence, the right to bear arms, the state of Israel. Up there with all of those things, I believe in the United States of America. And if there is one take-home message that I have for everyone here tonight, if there's just one thing that I want everybody to remember when they go home later, it's this. Despite the undeniable, indisputable, and incontrovertible problems, challenges, and threats currently afflicting the United States of America, this is still easily, by far and away, hands down, head and shoulders, the greatest country in the history of the world. And every single time I speak to an elementary school, a middle school, a public high school, or a college audience, I look those students in the eyes and I tell them that the day that they were born in the United States of America, or the day that they moved permanently to the United States of America, is the day that they won the lottery of life. And they got the most incredible, the most amazing, the most remarkable, the most sensational head start on anyone and everyone everywhere else. This is the best country in the world to be born in, to live in, to work in, to start a business in, to grow a business in, to realize a dream. This is the only country in the world where you can blaze a trail and leave a legacy. This is the only country in the world where you can color outside of the lines and not be punished. This is the only country in the world where success is not yet resented, but still admired and aspired to. This is the only country in the world where people still tend to aspire to greatness and disdain mediocrity. This is the only country in the world where your first language or your last name means absolutely nothing. This is the only country in the world where anybody can rise above any set of circumstances of their birth and go on to achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve. And this is the only country in the world, George, where failure is not fatal, where you can fall down 5,000 times, but if you've got grit, determination, and hustle, you can get up. 5001, Thomas Edison had 1,000 cracks at the light bulb. Colonel Sanders had his recipe for fried chicken rejected 1,009 times before he got a taker. Abraham Lincoln lost his first 6 elections. P.T. Barnum's first 2 circuses were abject failures, yet he went on to become the greatest showman. Walt Disney went bankrupt twice, almost 3 times. Same story with Henry Ford. Again and again and again, the lesson throughout American history has been that those with passion, those with perseverance, those with persistence, those that refuse to yield, end up leaving a legacy well beyond their time on this earth. And that's because America is special. America is the only country that is not just a country, not simply a stretch of land, not merely a geographic entity. America is an idea. It is an ideal, a notion, a value system, an improbable and daring experiment that actually remains equally as improbable and daring today. It's the hope that banishes all hopelessness. It's the shot that was heard around the world and still is. There are 4 ways that a nation is said to be exceptional: culturally, militarily, economically, and scientifically. And on each of those 4 measurements, in almost 5,000 years of recorded human history. And you want to hear the kicker? Here's the kicker. With less than 5% of the world's population, with less than 5% of the world's population, the United States of America has dominated those 4 spheres to an extent previously considered impossible. But none of that success, none of that might, none of that wealth, none of that influence, none of that power, none of that was accidental. None of that was incidental. Actually, to the contrary, all of it was extraordinarily deliberate, extremely intentional. See, the most brilliant men to have ever walked this earth were our founders, who understood that the way to unlocking human ingenuity, the way to unleashing human creativity, the way to driving human accomplishment was to make sure that men and women were as unencumbered as possible by the need for government approvals and red tape. And it's for precisely the same reason that the US has ascended to the position of guardian of liberty as the custodian of civilization.
Well, when we get down my list of questions, that's all being put at risk because we have some crazy people. But now it's time, like I told you guys, we do 2 questions and then we let the audience ask a question and participate. So you put your hand up so fast, sir. You go ahead.
He knows what he wants to ask.
Here, come here and get a mic so everybody can hear you. Because, no, we're all old. Come get this. And then hand it off. You can't keep it and keep asking questions.
I know, it looks suspect. Yeah, with that great speech you made about America, I totally agree with the things you said. We get a bit of hubris, though, in our country, and we try to export democracy or our way of life to other countries where it may not be appropriate. Do you think that's appropriate for us to try to conquer the world for democracy, or are we supposed to be the guardians of democracy, or what's the role of the United States in the world? What should it be, in your view?
It's an excellent question. What's your name, sir?
I'm John.
John. John, thank you for asking the question. Look, this is certainly something that has been a personal progression for me. Because if you'd asked me 20 years ago when I was a first-year student at university at the age of 19, if I believed that America exporting democracy to other countries was a good idea, I would have said absolutely. I would have said, you know, the more of the world that we can make look like the United States, the better. That was my position at the time. But as I've gotten older, I have realized that that's not possible. And the balance is always there, because when you look at it, let's just think about for one moment what the world might look like if there was all of a sudden no America. North Korea would invade South Korea. Taiwan would be overrun by China. War, maybe nuclear, would break out in the Middle East. Islamic terrorists would act with complete impunity. Tyrants in North Africa would run around even more mercilessly than what they already do. Russia would attempt to rebuild the Soviet empire. And then you've got things like cataclysmic natural disasters. If a national aircraft or international flight goes down, it's US planes that are searching for it. The satellites, all of that stuff is owned by the United States. So there is certainly a role, I think, for the United States to play. But I have very much become of the mind of President Trump, which is that everything should be in the lens of America first. That doesn't mean that we can't go and do things in other places, but the reasoning has got to be that it's putting our country and our people first. And we should always make sure that everything at home is looked after before we even consider going and doing things abroad. So if our veterans are suffering, we shouldn't be going overseas and fighting wars that are a long way away from home, that cost a lot of money, and that detract our attention from focusing on those problems on the home front.
John, does that answer your question? That was a pretty good answer, if you ask me. Okay, there you go. All right, so you guys can clap.
Thank you.
So you've written extensively about political correctness. I'm not speaking for everybody in here, but I'll speak for everybody in here. We have no time for it. But why do you think that political correctness has gotten so dangerous?
George, most people think that political correctness is simply an imposition on speech, just something that tells us what we can say and what we can't say. And that would be egregious enough with our proud tradition of the First Amendment. But political correctness is infinitely more than that, way more than that. Political correctness is a mindset, it's a mentality, it's a cultural attitude that says that you should strive for mediocrity and not greatness, that you shouldn't colour outside of the lines lest you be punished, that you should resent those that have differentiated themselves professionally, financially, or in some other fashion more so than you. In fact, political correctness mandates that success and achievement be a measurement of how much butt you kiss as opposed to how much butt you kick. What could be more un-American and anti-American than that? So political correctness is a choking conformity, a totalitarian ideology that strips us of our individualism, eliminates our patriotism, removes our self-confidence. And in doing so, political correctness transforms the American dream into the European and Australian nightmare. And why on earth would we want to follow the trajectories of the once grand nations of Europe, now with demography in decline, Islam in the ascendancy, where churches are being routinely transformed into nightclubs? Those cultures, those societies, those polities, those countries have become moribund and pedestrian and grey and vanilla and dull. There's no passion, there's no innovation, there are no inventions. That's not the future that we want for the United States of America. That's not the future that we want for our children and our grandchildren and our great-great-great-grandchildren. And that's certainly not the future that our founders had envisioned for us. Yes, America is complex, but American exceptionalism is actually stunningly simple. It's individualism, not collectivism. It's patriotism, not relativism. It's God, not government. It's faith, not secularism. It's equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome or equity. It's e pluribus unum, not radical multiculturalism. It's about being bold, not being bland. These are the virtues and values that have differentiated the United States of America, George, from every other country on this earth. But proponents and advocates of political correctness and its siblings, wokeness and cancel culture, would seek to eliminate every single one of those points of differentiation, rendering the United States of America just another country, just another place, just another Belgium. And it's very personal to me. I chose to come to the United States of America. I came to make, not take, to give, not receive, to join the place, not complain about it or change it. I came because I knew that this was the greatest country. I came because I knew that this was the place that would afford me the most freedom and opportunity to achieve the dreams that I had in my heart. But I also came here in no small, insignificant, or insubstantial way to make sure that the United States of America does not turn out like the country I felt I had to leave.
Wow. So let's move a little more. Let's talk about you. Your passion is for kids. So let's talk about your organization. Let everybody here know what you've been doing, what your organization is, why did you start it, and what impact you believe it's having.
In 2015, before I even had my green card, I went in to 25 public schools in, I think it was 8 or 9 states. And to my absolute horror, I discovered that today's young students had absolutely no idea what was in the Constitution, what the Declaration of Independence meant. They'd never even heard of the Federalist Papers. And more than that, they explained to me that they were turned off by the old English language in the Constitution. And all of the attention, all of the focus, all of the energy was fixing college campuses, think tanks in Washington. And all of these organizations do tremendous things. But in my mind, the real damage is done in K-12 schools. More specifically, I would say K-5, really. Because by the time any American student in 2023 sets foot on their college campus for the first time, the indoctrination that began the very first day that they went through their elementary school front gates is well and truly complete. And while I believe in fighting the left, fighting the enemy everywhere, I don't believe we should ever let the enemy be unopposed in any arena. In any war, you have to really kind of assign resources and time and energy based on the threat level. And I felt that conservatives had more or less completely ceded public school education to the left. So when I was going to immigrate with my green card, I was already a best-selling author. I was already on television. I'd already done a lot of things that I'd wanted to do. And I wanted to come to America to leave a legacy. I wanted to come to the US to really change and leave a positive impact on the youth, because I felt that the youth that really, really were struggling. So the very first day that I started, I began my non-profit, FLAG, the Foundation for Liberty and American Greatness, and we just set off running. And I think in that first year alone, just the last 4 months from September through December of 2016, I personally went into 42 public schools. And then we teamed up with interns from the late Justice Antonin Scalia's office, and we got the US Constitution into plain, simple, easy to understand English that even a fifth grader could comprehend. We launched it live on Fox News on Constitution Day in 2017 with a special 3-hour event on the Fox News Plaza in Manhattan. And that resource became an absolute rocket ship for us. And on the heels of the stunning success of the Students' Constitution, we then went and did the same thing with the Students' Declaration of Independence, students' selected readings of the Federalist Papers, the Students' Guide to the Electoral College, and our most recent resource is Freedom versus Socialism, a high schoolers guide. And I'm really proud to be able to tell the audience here at the Ahern Hotel tonight that we now have more than 1.6 million public school students that use at least one of our 5 student resources. Thank you. And in addition to that, we have our teacher's guide to teaching civics, so a professional development curriculum for teachers to use in the classroom. We have 12,262 teachers that use that curriculum in their classroom. We've got social media. We reach approximately 20 million Americans a month on all of our combined media platforms. And I should take the opportunity right now to invite all of you to follow Nick Adams and FLAG on every platform. It looks like a few people here have done maybe some time in Facebook jail and elsewhere, but for those of you that are free agents, please make sure that you follow us. We host a big gala every year, George. Last year, actually, it was in Las Vegas. A few people who are in this room right now were there. Kayleigh McEnany was our keynote speaker. This year, we just had Glenn Beck in Tampa. The year before, we were in Miami with Dennis Quaid. But FLAG's board, we've got Bill O'Reilly is on the board. We have Dennis Prager on the board. some of the biggest names really in all of the United States conservative movement, all who were mentors of mine. They've been with me from the very beginning, and they supported this effort, and we've been very blessed to grow into a big organisation. We now have 15 employees. We are working around the clock. We also have our Flag Schools Pledge, where we get schools to commit to doing 3 very simple things. Number 1, display an American flag in every classroom. Number 2, recite the Pledge of Allegiance every day. And number 3, sing the national anthem before all major sporting events. And as of last Friday afternoon, we now have 8,756 schools signed up to that commitment nationwide. So we're having a great impact, and the work doesn't end. We just keep on going, because that is the future of our country. And unless we can arrest the leftist control on our students, because the left have always understood much better than us that in order to be able to control tomorrow, you need to control the children of today. And so we're making an effort to fight back and arrest some of that control. It's a difficult task, but we are making great strides. Oh, and I'll also plug very quickly that our next gala next year will be in January 26 to 28. We're going to be in West Palm Beach. The welcome reception is going to be at Mar-a-Lago, and the actual gala itself will be at the O in Palm Beach.
That's good.
Tucker Carlson, I think, will be the speaker.
So it's time for another question, but before we get there, after we get done, he will be signing books, and you can meet him and take your phone out and take pictures with him. But the only thing I ask is that you tag us here at the Ahern Hotel, because remember, this is your hotel, this is the Freedom Hotel, and this is a safe zone for conservatives. Yes, sir, back in the back. Jimmy's going to bring the mic over to you. Hold on, because we know you have a low voice.
One thing I wanted to point out to Nick, that people are leaving, but it's only because there's another meeting downstairs.
That's okay.
So they're leaving because
They're coming back up. They're going to sign in, and they're coming back up, because
Okay.
the meeting downstairs doesn't start till 7. So
The question I really have is, my wife and I have an association with many people that have immigrated to the United States. They are probably the most, it bothers them the most of what's happening in our southern border. How do you feel as an immigrant that has gone the proper channels, but more likely, more importantly, how do people that are trying to go through those channels, how do they feel about the United States of America now?
wow. Before you answer that, thank you. You took my next question. So no more taking my questions, you guys. I've worked hard on these questions. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
Look, another very thoughtful question. No one gets more irritated, upset than a legal immigrant when we see what's happening down on the southern border. It took me 4.5 years, and it cost me close to $50,000 to legally immigrate to the United States of America. In fact, I even encountered political opposition, which made that time period longer. There was an Obama appointee who was working at the US consulate in Sydney, who decided, even after my extraordinary ability green card had already been approved, that because I only ever appeared on Fox News and not any other networks, that in his mind, a bad decision had been made by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, and he turned my life upside down by sending my case back with a recommendation that the original approval be revoked. More than that, there is a long-standing legal precedent that says that if you have displayed immigrant intent, there is you shouldn't visit, there's a chance that you can never visit the United States of America again, because the thinking goes that if you have demonstrated this intent and the approval hasn't happened for you, whether it's pending, whether it was rejected, then if they let you come back in, you're just going to stay. Now, in my case, I'd been to the United States 17 times before I was going to immigrate. But my attorneys advised me that I should not come back to the US. But I knew that I had to come back to the US to fight this. I knew that I had to go and get as many congressmen and women, senators, to write letters on my behalf to have this reapproved. Bob, I think you remember this. You were there at the time. And in any event, I took a risk. I came back to the United States, and I managed to get 17 congressmen, 6 US senators to write letters on my behalf and get my extraordinary ability green card reapproved. Now, no one really understands what's involved in legally immigrating to the United States. So in order to legally immigrate to the United States at the time that I did it, you had to have 8 vaccines within 6 months of immigrating. 8 vaccines. The flu shot, mumps, measles and rubella, and a whole host of other ones. Now it's 9, because you add the COVID vaccine to that. In order to legally immigrate to the United States, you have to get the COVID vaccine. No one in America knows about this. On top of that, you need to have a police check. Now, in my case, I had to do all of that twice at my own cost. Now, it's very, very frustrating to see bad behavior being rewarded. And it's not particularly difficult to work out that if there isn't going to be a reward for people breaking the law, they're not going to break the law anymore. So the best thing that the United States government can do is send out a very clear message that if you come to America the wrong way, we do not want you. If you come to America the wrong way, you will never, ever be allowed to stay. We will send you back. We will pay for you to go back. But you will never, ever get to be an American. And if that message was put out, I promise you, the perilous journey, and in many cases it's a perilous journey for these people. And it's a humane decision. The other thing that's never spoken about is how many people die trying to come to America illegally. There's lots. If you want to stop all of that, if you want to protect the American people from the wrong people coming here, it's tough love. It's saying that no, don't come here, because there is no way in the world we will let you stay. And if that's the message, people will stop coming and lives will be saved.
So let's ask your thoughts. Let's move to the upcoming primaries. We know that you were a Trump appointee. We know that you're good friends with Trump. But Trump's not participating in any of the primaries. We talked about this earlier in the back.
Debates, you mean?
In the debates, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In the debates. We talked about this in the back. The numbers, Trump's numbers actually just in every poll every week just go up. And a lot of the belief is because they have weaponized the justice system against him. So what's your opinion on the primaries? And one other caveat is we got a guy we like who came here a couple of weeks ago named Larry Elder. And they're trying to keep him out of the debates, and we don't even understand why that's happening.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on this?
Full disclosure, I'm not an impartial person, so President Trump has asked me to be a surrogate for the 2024 campaign, and I was a surrogate in 2020. I am a presidential appointee. I supported President Trump from the 16th of June 2015 when he walked down the escalator. So I am one of his staunchest supporters. I happen to think that he's the greatest modern day president that we've ever had. I think that his achievements in office were unbelievable, and while it pains me, what I think about is just how much more unbelievable they would have been if our own side would have supported him more. That to me is the great sadness of the first term of President Trump. There is no one in the primary field that is on the same level as Donald Trump. And that's not just because he's an ex-president. That's because of his charisma. That's because of he's a celebrity, the X factor. He has all of it. And just like in 2016, he's a once-in-a-generational candidate on our side. And just as in 2016 and 2015, everybody he makes great governors look small. He just does. I fully expect President Trump to win, not just the primary, but even the general. I am very sanguine about the prospects in 2024 for a lot of reasons. I wish that all of the Republican candidates right now that are in the primary would come together and basically realize that the writing is on the wall and get behind President Trump as soon as they can, because spending all this money and fighting and all of this stuff helps absolutely nobody except Joe Biden and the Democrats. On that side of things, I don't know what's going to happen. If I had to put money down, we're in Las Vegas. If I had to go and put money down on something, I would say that Joe Biden will still be the candidate. The more and more time that goes by, the more difficult it becomes for them to parachute somebody in. It's going to be a tight election. It's going to be a tight election. The country is 50-50. I know that sounds crazy because of how bad this guy is. It should be an 80-20 election. But unfortunately, we have 50% of the country that don't like America. They don't like the America that we love. They don't like the things about America that we love. And they're trying to change it. They're trying to transform it. That's what we're seeing. But I think Donald Trump is going to win the election. His closest competitor is Ron DeSanctimonious, as the president calls him. Look, I live in Florida. I have had some exposure to Governor DeSantis. I've found him to be socially awkward. I've found him to be rather petty and vindictive. And that's not been just my experience. That's kind of the experience of a lot of people. I found him being somebody who's in a business that requires liking people. And the feeling I get is that he doesn't really like to be around people. So it's kind of a little bit odd, his whole political ambition. Now, there's no question that he's the best governor in the country. That's not in dispute. But he's not ready for presidential level politics. He's just not. And he doesn't have, I think, the skills that are needed retail-wise, and I think that's going to be exposed here pretty soon in particularly places like New Hampshire and Iowa, where it very much is like a local government election, where people really do know the candidates.
Okay, now we're back to question time. Yes. Hold on. Jimmy's coming. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, you stood up, so you win. Hold on.
I was told that one of the reasons we're allowing almost open immigration is because look at the people from Mexico, Latin America, South America, etc. They're coming through. They are tough. They are often members of gangs, came from gangs. They would be ideal fighting force in the military once compared to the average video game playing, out of shape, American-born man, young man. And I wanted to know if you thought that that was true.
No. I agree with you that there's a significant amount of people crossing the border illegal that are unsavory people, and we don't want them in our country. But there's also a lot of people that are crossing the country, coming into the country because they're trying to escape a horrible life. But that's too bad. It's exactly what he said. There's a line, go get in line and wait your turn. Okay, it's a simple thing. Yes, sir. One more quick question.
I wanted to ask you, do you think, why is it that our side has so much trouble using a name? Now, if I remember right, back in the 60s, the radicals didn't hate the FBI. They hated J. Edgar Hoover. They don't hate the Republicans. They just happen to hate George Bush or happen to hate Donald Trump. We shouldn't be hating the public school teachers and the education system. We should be upset with Randy Weingarten. We always seem to talk in the abstract about the people who are causing trouble on the other side. And the great Saul Alinsky told us not to do that. Always identify and personalize your target. And I'm just wondering, I do it myself a lot, and I'm wondering why this happens in the conservative mindset, if you have any ideas on that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating observation, sir. I think you're actually on the money. With the exception of Donald Trump, I don't believe that conservatives are good marketers at all. So that is something I think that is very effective, to follow the page book of Saul Alinsky. Without a doubt, if you can make someone think of a picture when you're talking about something, that is extraordinarily powerful. So I do think that the Conservatives and the Republican Party would gain significantly if they were to take on that particular approach. Again, it's just another example of how the left, sadly, tragically, is just so much better equipped than us to fight this. It's why we always lose. They say that Republicans are great at winning elections, but horrible at winning the culture. And this is one of the reasons. We don't have the same marketing genius. We don't have the same instincts. Now, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're busy building up our businesses, saving up our money to send our children off to college. We actually go to work. So they have a whole lot more time to dedicate to working out how to screw us over. But if we want to win this, we need to adopt the same tactics. And I've always said that if you can't make somebody see the light, you make them feel the heat. And that's what we've got to do.
That's a good answer. Ma'am, since you were so I'm going to let you ask your question. Unless it's a bad question.
Well, oh no. Well, I hope you like the question. My name's Les. I'm a refugee from California. I voted for Trump, and I'll vote for him again. I don't care what they do. But what concerns me is we are so disconnected, I think, as conservatives. The left is like the Borg. They are implementing a plan that they have been quietly working on for 30 years in this country. And we're just going about life like we usually do. I heard yesterday China put 103 battleships right out in front of Taiwan. Today I hear that the 40 cities, now I'm very familiar with the World Economic Forum and George Soros, but I never heard, for all of my reading, that 40 cities in the United States have signed on to this. I forgot the name of what it's called, but it is, no.
And your question is?
Well, my question is, well, let me just tell you this. This is where they're going to get rid of meat and oh shoot, anyway, the 40 cities. They've got our President Trump there, and we don't seem to do anything about it. McCarthy, our conservatives, for all of the good things that...
And your question is?
How do we become more effective? We are not effective as a group, and World War III is going to take all our kids and grandkids.
She wants to know how we're going to smack the snot out of the Democrats.
Okay.
And then govern correctly.
Well, I'm going to try and give an abridged answer because that's a difficult question to answer. So let me start with this. For the last 60 years, there has been a culture war raging in this country, but only one side has been fighting it. They've done it with lies, violence, the threat of violence, and the hostile takeovers of our universities. They are dedicated to nothing short of our annihilation. And in their dogged pursuit of this singular objective, they are governed only by three things: the rules of Saul Alinsky, the morals of the Chicago mob, and the money of George Soros. While this culture war has raged, we conservatives, we hard-working, everyday, regular, ordinary American men and women have been busy paying off our mortgages, growing our businesses, saving up our money to send our children off to college. And we have constantly and consistently and continually sought the high ground and elevated things like collegiality and dignity and propriety to the point now we wake up in the morning, we almost choke on our bacon and eggs as we watch the morning television because we cannot believe what our eyes are seeing. The local high school is changing its name. The statue outside the courthouse has been there for eons, has been designated for removal. The elementary school 2 counties away has officially changed the school calendar to read from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Day in and day out, there is a relentless assault on American values, a relentless assault on everything that we know and we love. And it is for 2 reasons. Number one, all of the cultural institutions that shape and generate our culture are in the hands of people that want to fundamentally transform, or in their most recent terminology, reset America. Their words, not mine. They don't love America the way that we love America. They don't love the things about America that we love about America. They want to transform America into something that it isn't, something that it has never been, and quite frankly, something that it should never, ever become. Second reason is what I call the passion gap. Always hard to speak about publicly. But if we're going to win this, we have to be brutally candid with ourselves. So here it goes. For the last 60 years, the left in this country have wanted to destroy America more than we have wanted to protect it. For the last 60 years, the left in this country have wanted to destroy America more than we have wanted to protect it. And ultimately, what this boils down to is a street fight. It's going to come down to who wants it the most. And until we can match them in intensity, in passion, and in strategy, we're going to continue to lose all of the things that we know and we love. This is a war that we did not start, but it is a war that we have no choice but to finish. This is a war that we did nothing to provoke or invite, but this is a war that we have absolutely no choice but to attend. For where we sit, this is freedom's Colosseum. Freedom will live or freedom will perish right here on American soil. The rest of the world is too far gone. And the pages of the history books yet to be written will reflect the actions that we determined to take at this juncture. Did we invest in the next generation of Americans? Did we insist on our citizens believing in American values? Or did we continue to permit our children to be brainwashed with European values? Did we make every conceivable effort to secure our elections? Did we make every conceivable effort to win our elections? Did we continue to be bullied and silenced and harassed and intimidated by political correctness? Or did we punch the bully in the nose and relegate it right where it belongs, on the dusty bottom bookshelf of some fourth-rate library in the middle of nowhere? These are the questions whose answers will determine what happens. But I want you to have hope, because by virtue of the work that I do, I get to be in a different city almost every single day. I'm on the road about 120 days of the year. And I want you to know that there are patriots of the highest order fighting gallantly for our values, George. There are more of us than there are them. But they're more organized than us. They're more strategic than us. And they want it more than us. But if we change those things and we match them in strategy, we match them in passion, and we match them in intensity, we will win this fight.
What do you think of that, kids? All right, so now we're coming to the part of our program which is, for me, the best part, because I get to get off stage. So we are lucky tonight to have with us the chairman of the Ahern Family Companies, Don Ahern. All of you see, he's very approachable. He'll talk to you. He'll answer your questions. And you guys need to understand this. It's not thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. In the last 5.5 years, he's put tens of millions of dollars into ensuring that we elect right Republicans, he was the largest individual supporter in the United States to President Trump, because he believes that this company's worth saving. So without any further ado, I'd like to bring Don Ahern up. Don always likes to spend the last few minutes with our guests and thank them. And thank you guys for coming. And remember, next week I need each of you to bring 5 people.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Thank you, Nick. You know, this gentleman we've got here to my left he's quite an interesting guy, isn't he? You know, you're going to get on our good list if you're not careful. But you know what's even kind of cool is his little accent. Isn't that kind of fun for us, isn't it? But I guess down in Australia, it's pretty normal, isn't it?
Standard. I've been practicing it a long time.
Good for you. I know a few people from Australia, and I've enjoyed it. I've been to Australia. It's a wonderful country. Been to Bris Vegas. Have you heard of that place?
I have heard of that place. I've been there.
Who's been to Bris Vegas? Brisbane. Tell us about your country, geographically speaking. What do you miss from over there that you don't get here?
Mr. Ahern, it's a good question. Look, obviously when you grow up in a place, there's particular candies, there's particular food that you miss. You certainly miss your friends. But other than that, I've got to tell you, and it probably helps that whatever family I do have, I have here. I was down there in December of last year, and you've got to remember that the international perception of Australia is vastly different to the domestic reality. And the truth is that Australia has always been an infinitely more European place, in instinct, in proclivity, in values, in culture, and in setup. And anybody that's had access to a television set over the last few years and saw what transpired down in Australia with COVID will know just how different Australia is. It's very restrictive on speech. It is very different to the US in terms of every famous Australian that you know doesn't live in Australia. They live here. Right. And that's because successful people gravitate to the US, and because this is the best country in the world to be successful in. Geographically speaking, Australia is actually slightly larger than the continental United States in landmass. However, we have the population of less than Texas, more so like Florida. So there are only 23 million Australians in a landmass greater than the continental United States. So it's a pretty sparse place. The population tends to live on the east coast and then a very little bit on the west coast, but it's all coastal. The centre of Australia is pretty much completely empty. And unlike the brave ingenuity here where you have a city like Las Vegas built in the middle of a desert, Australia doesn't have that. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the water is far more finite than here in the United States. The topsoil is far less than the United States. And of course, there isn't that culture of inventing and creating new frontiers and things like that. So we don't have a Las Vegas, unfortunately. We're stuck with giving ordinary cities the moniker of Vegas as part of their name. But it was growing up. It's a country that teaches you to be well-rounded, whereas here in the United States, it's really all about specialization. So I'm grateful for being raised there because I think it's set me up in a way that perhaps if I was born in the United States, I may not have been able to take advantage as much of a lot of the opportunities that were presented to me.
Well, I'm glad you're proud of Australia and where your roots were, where they came from. It is a great country. It's nice. It's very beautiful. It's kind of amazing how the people are kind of pushed around the edges and not much going on in the middle. As I've seen, actually our business, we have about 17 international stores, and 4 of them are in Australia.
Wow.
So we have a lot of employees down there.
It's a long way.
It's a long ways. I haven't been there since before COVID. So, and I'll probably go back eventually. But anyhow, we're very grateful to have you here in America. We need to hear from you, you know, and part of what I wanted to achieve by having these little Tuesday night political events is that we would bring people to you here, I'm talking to everybody in the audience here, that would tell us a little bit about politics from where they come from. Now, our intention originally would be to bring a sitting congressman or a senator from other locations around the United States, but anyhow, you represent something different, and what we want to know is not necessarily what's going on here in Nevada or what you might think about it. We want to know where you come from and what you think about where the world's moving. Because, you know, if you live here in Nevada and you don't leave and run around a little bit, then all we know is what we know, and we kind of got blinders on. But I think tonight you've achieved and have accomplished my goal, and that is to understand somebody else's view from afar. And I think we give a big hand to Nick here for telling us what an immigrant or somebody from another country might think. And you're making our country a better country. You're doing a better job than almost every American across the United States for our country. So we're very, very grateful to you. Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. My job is to try to trip you up a little bit. Okay, who's going to run if Biden doesn't run? And I'm going to suggest to you that it might be a woman.
Michelle Obama.
It might be a black. Okay, we didn't hear that, did we? Okay, that is exactly what I was talking to you about. Some of us have to be kind of careful that we don't fall into conspiracy theory, you know. And by the way, I want to acknowledge, Nick, we have a couple of special people in the audience today. We have Dave Gibbs. He was back there, I think. Did he leave? Oh, he went down. Pauline Lee is here. Okay. Well, we have Tony Grady here. How are you doing, Tony? Stand up. Take a look. Here's Tony's a great man. He's somebody you could get behind and vote for pretty easy. I could tell you that. You're a good guy. You're a little bit short, kind of make me feel a little less than want to feel. But anyhow, if Michelle becomes if Michael becomes our Democratic nominee for the President of the United States, could that happen? Could this be an extension of Obama? Is Obama kind of running the country right now? In other words, conspiracy. Tell us what you know.
All right. So, yes, Michelle Obama could run. Yes, Michelle Obama poses the biggest threat, I believe, to Republicans, to President Trump, without a doubt. The Obamas are certainly running the Biden presidency, but it's not really a conspiratorial kind of thing. It's a personnel thing. Valerie Jarrett is still involved. Eric Holder is very involved. The Democrats have Joe Biden exactly where they want him. Demented and in the White House. Because essentially he's playing the role of the puppet. And all of these Obama people are pulling the strings. This is the third term of Barack Obama, without a question. But Michelle Obama running will be very, very, very difficult for Republicans to overcome. She is my personal worst nightmare because she ticks a lot of boxes. She is going to galvanize the Democrats in a way that Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom can't. So Gavin Newsom, I think Republicans underestimate significantly in terms of certainly not his gubernatorial record by any stretch. I mean, who wants to live in California? Half the states in this room tonight. But he is very eloquent. He looks like a movie star. He has a lot going for him for the general population that are not actively following things. But Michelle Obama poses a very unique risk, Mr. Ahern, to our fortunes in 2024. And if she is the nominee, I have heard, and I can only go based on what I've heard, I have heard that despite people pushing her to do it, she does not want to do it. So
well, that might be our saving grace right
Yes,
there, huh?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, who's going to vote for her? You know, I kind of have a little line here, and I think. Do you think that there's a lot of the women in the United States, both black and white, and just women in general? Do you think they're going to vote for her because she's a woman?
Yes. Yes, absolutely, without question. We saw it in 2008. President Obama was elected. And what was really sad is that, and look, as a patriotic American, and we're all like this, we should be rooting for the success of any president of the United States, whatever party they're from. I just saw President Trump in an interview with NBC a couple of days ago say, listen, it would have been against my interest, but I really hoped that Joe Biden was going to do well. But he hasn't. In fact, he's brought the country backwards in a way that was everyone's worst nightmare. So we want our presidents to succeed. But unfortunately, in 2008, so Obama came out, and so all that to say, I was quietly optimistic. I mean, I didn't like his tax and spend. I didn't like all his policies. But I thought that perhaps he could really offer something at that time to the American people. And all of his rhetoric in the campaign was about unity, was racially unifying. In fact, they asked him when he was losing to Hillary at the time in the primary, they said, do you believe it's because you're black? And to his great credit, he said no. And yet, as soon as he became president, he completely did the 360 and became the most racially divisive president we've ever had. from Trayvon Martin to all of the other stuff that we witnessed. And that was, well, it's deceptive, obviously, but it's also really sad. And so the American people, I think, and we do it on our own side, Mr. Ahern, and I'm not a big fan of it. I'm really not. But conservatives feel that we need to break up different groups of Americans and target them specifically. I believe in one thing for all Americans. I believe in creating a ladder of opportunity for Americans. I believe in selling the American dream to all Americans, not having a special platform for black Americans and Hispanic Americans and females, and that's really leftist stuff. Now, we do it because we think that it's electorally advantageous to take that approach. But to me, the Constitution wasn't written for black people or brown people or whatever. It was built for every American. The Declaration of Independence is for every American. And so we should really be marketing to everybody and not breaking it up. I don't like it when we do that, but that's what conservatives have chosen to do. And as a result, people vote for the gender. They vote for the color. And it's all about creating history and being a part of it and posting on your social media that I cast my first vote for a black female as president and I feel better about myself today. To hell with the country. Now, I've got no problem supporting a black female. At one point, I would have supported Condoleezza Rice to be president. But to do it because it's a virtue signal is the worst thing that you can do.
Right, that's a good answer. Now, you're going to have an opportunity, obviously, based on your comments relating to Trump, that you probably, let's say he does win, you're going to be right in there close to him, and you'll probably be appointed to something good and all these things. But in the meantime, is there anything that you could do or anybody that's working around him? I just kind of think that we're going to have a real hard time getting Trump reelected if the women don't get behind him. Now, I've got this little battle at home. My wife loves Trump. She loves Trump. But she says, man, he needs to do something to not be him. He needs a little more Reagan in him, something that women, as a rule, can kind of attach their... Okay, God bless you, woman. Okay, that's great. That's great. And listen, my wife's going to vote for him, and we're going to keep supporting him and doing everything. But the fact is, we've got to get millions and millions and millions of women to kind of move over that way. And the same may be for the black. But I think that more specifically, there's a lot of women out there that could really swing this state. So I'm going to leave you with the question. The question is, what could Trump do to try to become, to try to attract these women into voting for him?
Well, it's very interesting, Mr. Ahern, that you would raise this question, because it's actually an exact replica of the conversation that I had with the president in Mar-a-Lago in his office on the 28th of February when I last saw him. I had 50 minutes with him and in person. And so for those of you that follow me on Twitter, I have been, the last 2 years, very focused on building up a movement of young men that are unafraid to express their masculinity. Creating a generation of alpha males. And I have a new book that is going to be coming out here in the next few months. It's called Alpha Kings, the roadmap for every young man to unlock their full potential. And President Trump has written the foreword to the book.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And it's the first foreword that he's written since 2005. And the point that I made to the president, I said, Mr. President, there are a lot of women that are simply not coming back to you. And the only way that we can compensate for that is by driving out the male vote. And that's one of the reasons that the President and I have been working closely on this particular matter. I think that there are a lot of, by now, I think, Mr. Ahern, people's opinions of President Trump, whether they're good or bad, are pretty baked in. There's not many people that are going to change their mind. If you're a suburban woman that in 2020 didn't vote for Donald Trump, you're probably not going to vote for him this time. So in order to win, he needs to get people to come and vote that haven't voted before. And I think his best bet is with young men. And because I don't think that he can ameliorate. I mean, he is, the thing other people forget is that he's 77 years old and he was in the construction business and he comes from a big city. That is how men communicate of that generation in that particular space. And he wasn't going to change at 40. He's certainly not going to change at 77 years old. So he's going to be who he is, but I think that he can deal with the woman problem, if you want to call it that. I think he can deal with it by focusing on bringing out the male vote. And just as a general principle, the female vote, forget Donald Trump, the female vote is drifting further and further and further away from Republicans every single cycle. So if we don't go and focus on getting men driven to go and vote and do things, you just go and have a look at the numbers. There are less women every single cycle voting for Republican candidates. It's indisputable. So we need to compensate for that, I think, by really targeting men.
Well, I hope it works out that way. But I do believe that there's got to be something he can pivot on a little bit to make himself a little bit more, to bring those women back in. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, maybe he should start mentioning the mama bears when he talks.
Everybody, hold on. So we have to unfortunately wind this up because he's got to sign some books and then go to another dinner here. And some of you have to be downstairs at the Central Committee meeting because they need your votes. But we want you to get an opportunity to get a picture, get a book if you want a book. And so I'm going to let Don close this out, and then we got to wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you, God. Thank you, George. I do want to say one point, and I'm going to skip this one here about is there room for a third party? Just leave you at that thought. We're not going to talk about a third party tonight, but we are going to talk about is there room for a revolution? What's going to happen if President Trump is incarcerated, put in handcuffs, and taken behind the jail bars? I don't think it's going to happen, but everybody I talk to is like, okay, that's when hell is going to be seen.
I wouldn't want to be around if that happens.
Right.
Mr. Ahern, to be honest with you. Look, I like you, I don't believe it will happen. I think at most the president's going to have to pay a fine. And at the absolute worst, house arrest at Mar-a-Lago. Because there's no way in the world that they're going to put a president in general population that needs a Secret Service detail. So the whole concept of him going to jail and stuff is, not really on the cards. But yes, if President Trump is convicted and the punishment exceeds what 80 million people believe it should be, it's going to be very ugly. It's going to be very ugly. And perhaps that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and that could be what then spirals the United States into its last quarter of a century as the superpower.
Okay, that's Nick Adams, my friends. We're very grateful to him. Please stick around and let him sign your book, and follow him on Twitter, Facebook, everything. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
God bless you, buddy.
So